Roger. Arriving shortly at LZ. This is B-Quad. On station at LZ.
What's up, boss?
Let us know if you need supplies, boss. Boss, if you need combat support, just say the word.
Speak. Where are your friends?
Roger. This is B-Quad. Arriving shortly at LZ. This is B-Quad. On station at LZ. Departing.
to develop new equipment. Just give the order.
What's wrong? I just mean he looks more like a wolf to me. That's crazy. He's a dog. A dog. So you think he's a dog? What's important is he's
Thank you for getting those animals out, boss.
say she was the mother of modern...
Boss! Boss! Boss, dispatch me on my next mission.
Spit it out.
Don't let that woman out. Please. Thank you, boss.
Roger. This is Pequod. Arriving shortly at LZ. This is Pequod. On station at LZ.
Boss. Amazing.
Roger. This is B-Quad. Arriving shortly at LZ. This is B-Quad. On station at LZ.
extract him. That's the target.
что-то странное. Какие будут указания? Дмитрий 4, что случилось? Ответьте, Дмитрий 4.
С дороги!
КП-06, тут происходит что-то странное. Жду указаний. Прием.
Какого?
Это КП. Понял. Усилить безопасность. Повышенная боевая готовность. Конец связи. КП-06, тут происходит что-то странное. Жду указаний. Прием. Это КП. Понял. Усилить безопасность. Повышенная боевая готовность. Конец связи. Что случилось? Ответьте, 06.
С тобой все в порядке?
У нас проблема. Тревога по всем постам.
Subject on board. Leave the rest to us.
КП-23. Дмитрий 3, что случилось? Ответьте, Дмитрий 3.
Roger.
КП, это Михаил. Один из наших без сознания. Прием. Это КП. Понял. На нас напали. Всем подразделениям. Боевую готовность. Конец связи. КП. На меня кто-то напал. Скорее всего, напал лазутчик. Жду указания. Прием. Это КП. Понял. squad. Arriving shortly at LZ. This is P-Quad. Have arrived at LZ. Will stand by. Gaining altitude.
has two objectives. Eliminate the colonel scheduled to take up a post at Smasi Fort, and stop the deployment of his tank unit. Your first move should be to head to Sakai village and search for the colonel and his deployment plans.
your friends?
Subject on board. Leave the rest to us.
Speak. Spit it out. Where are your friends?
Get down. The enemy sniper. Stay low and crawl along the ground. That should enable you to sneak past enemies.
Всем боевым группам! Это кафе! Все единицы приготовиться к бою! Зона 1, это кафе! Открыть подавляющий минометный огонь по противнику! Прием! Это зона 1! Вас понял! Подготовка к минометному огню! Конец связи! Зона 1, это кафе! Открыть подавляющий минометный огонь по цели! Прием! Это зона 1! Вас понял! Подготовка к минометному огню! Конец связи! Комплект Дмитрий-1. Потерял визуальный контакт. Перемещаюсь к последней известной позиции. Прием! Это КП. Понял. Будьте начеку и найдите противника. Конец связи.
Stop him!
Компания 234! Никаких признаков противника! Обыскиваю местность! Прием! Это КП, понял. Они не могли уйти далеко. Будьте бдительны. Конец связи. Штаб, это КП. По нам велся огонь. Открыли огонь в ответ, но потеряли врага. Враг может все еще прятаться поблизости. Соблюдайте осторожность. Прием. Subject is in. Всем боевым группам, это КП! На нас напали! Всем подразделениям занять боевые позиции! Это КП, понял? Внимание всем подразделениям! Отправить все резервы на помощь! Повторяю, отправить помощь! Конец связи!
Where are your friends?
A Soviet tank. If you could steal that, nothing could stop you. But make a wrong move, and it'll chew you up. This is B-Quad. Approaching position. This is B-Quad. I have arrived at marker. Cover fire. In hot. In hot. Watch out, boss. Target acquired. In hot. In hot. Watch out, boss.
Watch out, boss!
Boss, leave the intel files till later. The enemy's on combat alert.
P1 is in hot! Find cover! In hot! Watch out, boss! This is P-Quad. No targets remaining. Ending attack run and we'll stand by at LZ.
Boss, that document you just got is the deployment plans for the Smassi Fort reinforcements. According to the plans, the Colonel is supposed to join up with a tank unit at Waksin Barracks and then proceed to Smassi Fort. Those tanks being on the move doesn't make things easy. Hurry, boss. I've sent the tank unit's route to your iDroid.
This is P-Quad. Have arrived at LZ. We'll stand by.
those tanks, boss. Just one tank left.
Hey, quit kidding around. Snake?
I've sent the tank unit's route to your iDroid.
Snake? Snake!
I've sent the tank unit's route to your iDroid. Nice work. Good. You've completed the objective. Now get out of there. Exfiltrate out of the hot zone by chopper or on land. Roger.
Arriving shortly at LZ. This is Pequod. Have arrived at LZ. Will stand by. Gaining altitude.
All right, you're out of the hot zone. No enemy forces in pursuit. Mission complete.
Departing.
mission can get all worked out in the end. Boss, the scientist Emmerich wants us to find him so he can defect. He should be inside Serac power plant. Make contact with him.
Welcome.
Roger.
This is B-Quad. Arriving shortly at LZ.
Good dog.
This is B-Quad. On station at LZ. Heading for objective.
Roger.
This is B-Quad. Arriving shortly at LZ. This is B-Quad. On station at LZ. Heading for objective.
Spit it out.
Good dog.
Roger.
This is B-Quad. Arriving shortly at LZ. This is B-Quad. Have arrived at LZ. Will stand by. Gaining altitude.
Take this!
Subject on board. Leave the rest to us. Roger.
Squad. Arriving shortly at LZ. This is B Squad. On station at LZ. Gaining altitude.
Roger.
Arriving shortly at LZ. This is Pequod. Have arrived at LZ. Will stand by.
We were lucky to get our hands on that cyborg arm developer. There's no one in Diamond Dogs who can so much as maintain that thing.
Bionic arm, not cyborg, if you go by what he calls it. But you're right, the East is light years ahead in bionics. They can even detect through the skin the slight electrical signals from the brain that order muscles to move. The Soviet Union completed their first bionic arm capable of doing that back in the 60s. Although I guess that news didn't really reach the West.
No kidding. Zadorov's was the only one I ever saw. Quite a shock to see it for the first time.
And it was no mean feat to get hold of Snake's arm. I couldn't get one for you at the time, but you know, now...
Forget it. I've no intention of relying on bionics. Right now I need to keep the pain fresh in my mind.
Well, it's your decision. But don't you find it... inconvenient?
Not a bit.
But the phantom pain, it never lets up. Do you know how many men I saw die that day? There's nothing we can do to bring them back. And you expect me to care about getting a measly arm and leg back? Sorry. But my pain belongs to all our dead comrades. I'll keep living with it for their sake. It'll guide me straight and true until I've gotten them the vengeance they deserve. Diamond Dog's intel team specializes in information gathering, mainly HUMINT and SIGINT. They plant scouts and moles in the field. These operatives will blend into the local populace and work under the guise of a resident, or disguise themselves as travelers and ask around for information. They observe targets using various hidden bugs, cameras, and transmitters, and by tapping their satellite and phone communications. Analyzing all this information creates a clear picture of how wars and the PFs fighting them are changing. This data can also be used for threat assessment when deciding whether to accept contracts from certain clients. And during missions, the intel team keeps track of target locations and produces FOM predictions, reporting mission-critical information based on real-time remote observation of changes in the AO. What you hear from us over the radio is based on how we interpret the data gathered at the command platform. However, intel team operatives go unarmed in almost all situations to avoid revealing themselves to the enemy. Some will carry a knife, but most have nothing at all. As such, don't expect them to help you take on heavily armed adversaries like PF soldiers. Think of them as entirely passive in the hot zone. Plus, they use all manner of techniques to remain inconspicuous in the field. If you ever spot one, you'll have some serious explaining to do. So remember, their specialty is espionage. They may not be of use in a firefight, but when it comes to intel, they're pros.
DD makes a pretty good partner, huh, boss?
Too early to say.
Yeah? Just seeing him come back makes me real proud.
What breed is he? He's not a husky.
You're right. Siberian Husky is a cross between a Spitz-type dog and a wolf. I think DD might have some wolf blood in him, too. He isn't just smart. He's also shown remarkable judgment. If he doesn't do what you want him to, he's just doing what he thinks is right in the situation. And he's steady under fire. Remember, he's no lapdog. But learn his strengths, and you'll understand each other soon enough. You'll make one hell of a team.
Ocelot. Why'd you take it upon yourself to train him?
Why?
Yeah. When's the last time you heard a wildcat raising a dog?
I have an eye for him. I knew at first glance he'd make the right partner for you.
Huh.
And I figured it was about time he got out into the world.
So you passed him off on me?
There, you see? I knew you liked him.
I don't know about that yet. I still think he's trying to figure me out, too.
I'll spend some more time with him. You'll see how helpful he can be.
What about you?
I prefer to work alone.
Ocelots don't hunt in packs.
Yeah, something like that. Anyway, I'm glad you like him. DD's really taken to you, too. And to going on your walks. Don't be shy about taking him with you in the future.
I'll think about it.
The new mother base started out as a test drilling rig operated by a mineral resources supplier, but their project fell through. The Seychelles government was happy to hand the place over to us. It was just scrap on stilts. So with a few dummy construction companies set up as fronts, we started renovating the half-finished rig. From the outside, it looked like the project was back on rails.
Kaz, you...
What?
I see what you're doing. Recreating the mother base we had 9 years ago. Only this time.
That's right. The mother base Cypher thought they destroyed will return from the grave to kill them. We'll prove to the world that we were the victors.
And if we lose again?
They can't fool us the same way twice. Now our enemies are in plain sight. And when our organization gets too big, we split it across companies. Any company that draws attention gets liquidated, and its capital is back-channeled into a new company. Most PFs are small-time operations anyway. And in this business, the minnows go bankrupt all the time. We've never aroused suspicion. Plus, we have Hewick.
Hewick?
HUMINT Exploitation Company. It's a business specializing in intel gathering. Think of it as a civilian intelligence agency.
Kaz, that's...
Remember what they were trying to accomplish at the prison facility in Cuba? That gave me the idea. We dispatch moles into conflict zones around the world, and each sets up an intel network on site. Then they stay in place to give us stable points of contact when other nations intervene in the conflicts. Hewick's strength is that it has a cutout at each level. You get your job from one guy, then you hand it off to another. No one has direct access. It's a perfect black box. Hewick members also work their way into the superpowers intelligence agencies to make sure Diamond Dogs gets work. We have those countries by the balls. That's our deterrent when we need it.
Networking? In the intelligence community?
Sure, that's how we've grown this far. And when you go out on missions, intel from Hewick will be there to back you up. But despite all that, Cypher has its eyes on us. The only reason I'm not dead is that they needed to know where you were. Figured if you woke up, I'd go straight to you.
That's why you made that ruckus at the Zero Line.
Yeah, to make their own surveillance work against them. I think it took some of the heat off Cyprus.
Kaz.
Then I just had to wait for you to save me. And I've gotten used to waiting.
Kaz.
That's not all. It was a good chance to scout the market. And with the West wanting the Soviets out of Afghanistan, their agencies are bursting at the seams with funding. Boss, let's start by building up our Afghan presence.
Why put Mother Base in the Seychelles?
We're at the center of the world here.
We're all the way out in the Indian Ocean.
Come on. Lebanon, Sri Lanka, East Timor, and Africa. From here, our reach extends to conflict zones the world over, including Afghanistan, of course.
So it's prime real estate for a mercenary.
Exactly. Latin America isn't as close as I'd like, but we have Amanda and her people to help in that department. And besides, the Seychelles government owes us a favor.
Owes us?
The Seychelles has strong ties to the East, which the West wanted to shake up. It came to a head 3 years ago in an attempted coup. It was a force of South African mercenaries with U.S. backing behind the scenes. They were only platoon size, but South Africa is home to some heavy PFs, too much for the Seychelles to handle. In the end, they accepted help from the Tanzanian army and quelled the coup. We set up the deal and handled on-site tactical instruction. That led to some training work for the Seychelles military. And when we put down a mutiny within their forces, well, we made a lot of people happy. They don't pay us. They just let us have a piece of their offshore territory on the promise we'll come running if something else happens.
So we're bodyguards, too.
It's a good setup. We can only take Mother Base so far here. We'll have to find somewhere else when this place starts getting big.
Aren't you being a little hasty?
Nothing hasty about it. You're back with us now.
So, Kaz, the ship that took us from Cyprus, it used to be a whaler.
Yeah, a Japanese vessel. How was the voyage?
It was... stimulating.
Well, she was part of a whaling fleet up until a few years ago. Her displacement isn't anything to write home about, but she can really move. She still had plenty of life left in her, but then the work dried up. Global opposition to whaling has been mounting for years.
Is that right?
The push to ban it has been gaining traction for a little over a decade. Individual species came under protection as the years went on. And then 2 years ago, the IWC adopted a moratorium on commercial whaling. Several countries, including Japan, fought it to the bitter end. But eventually, most whaling companies had no choice but to throw in the towel. You ever tried whale snake?
Can't say that I have.
When I was a kid in Japan, practically everybody ate it.
That good, huh?
The country was poor in those days, and whale was cheap. International opinions changed since then. In any case, that's why we were able to get a bargain price on the ship. Of course, we did end up spending... Diamond Dogs. The word diamond originally comes from the Greek adamas. It means indomitable, unyielding. Other words for the stones often mean eternal bond, fortitude, or purity. The same is true of the Star of Bethlehem flowers you laid on the boss's grave. They represent innocence, as well as chastity, yielding to no man while maintaining one's virtue. In other words, staying loyal to something.
You're up.
We're changing ships?
We can't go sailing the Suez in a whaler.
The Suez Canal. When did they reopen it?
Not long after you were attacked. Once they finished sweeping it for mines after the Arab-Israeli conflict. Can you stand? We've got to transfer to a container ship for passage through the Suez. Our destination is Pakistan, Afghanistan's neighbor to the south. There, we disembark and head via Peshawar to the Zero Line, the border. We'll travel to the Khyber Pass by road.
And then?
We continue on horseback. Afghanistan's main roads are under Soviet control. We'll need to go around them. It'll be all narrow, winding paths through the mountains. We'll do better on horseback. It's a local guerrilla tactic. They use the higher ridges to avoid air recons. Then they charge down the mountains for ambushes. The Soviets still haven't devised a counter-strategy. Our time frame is only half as much as we really need. It'll be a tough march.
Better horses than boats.
Well, it'll make for good physiotherapy. Take the time to get used to that new arm.
While the Soviets have indicated they are not participating in the Los Angeles Olympics, primarily because the United States has made no attempt to guarantee the safety of the Soviet Union's athletes, the United States is increasingly demonstrating the belief that the issue has nothing to do with its preparations, and in fact this is retaliation for the Western nations' boycott of the previous Moscow Olympics. That concludes today's news.
That's quite some news.
The Soviet Union not attending the LA Olympics? Yeah. Andropov's death has changed some things. They're calling it revenge for the Western boycott of the Moscow Olympics.
Countries boycotted the Moscow Olympics?
Yes. In protest of the Soviet Union's invasion of Afghanistan. Over 50 countries were absent. It's too bad I didn't get to see Yamashita's judo. When the 40th Army crossed the Amu River 4 years ago, détente went right out the window. The U.S. Congress chose not to ratify SALT II, and Reagan's hardline politics won in the presidency in a landslide. According to him, the Soviet Union's an evil empire.
A second Cold War.
And there's been no end to regional conflicts and civil wars. Lebanon, the Falklands, Grenada, Iran, Iraq. The story never changes. Egypt and Israel did sign a peace treaty. But then the driving force on the Egyptian side, President Sadat, was assassinated afterward. Apparently, his actions were considered a betrayal of his fellow Arabs.
Islamic extremists?
Yes. Fundamentalist extremists have been responsible for some bold acts of terrorism in recent years. We've had extremist students in Iran take U.S. embassy workers hostage, and suicide bombings in Lebanon. Over 300 foreign soldiers stationed there have been killed. The countries have yet to develop an effective means of dealing with terrorism. Afraid of losing their own men, they've pulled their forces out, handing private forces a golden opportunity.
Private forces?
Small armies with no national affiliation, working for the highest bidder. That's right, they got the idea from you. After Mother Base went down, they began spreading to meet the soaring demand. Miller's organization is just one of many PFs now. The entire world is after you. But at the same time, it needs you too. Miller told me about what happened in the Caribbean 9 years.
Ocelot. I hear they started calling you Shalashaska in Afghanistan. What's that about?
You know the term Sharashka? It's slang for a suspicious, hastily thrown together organization. The word became associated with a type of forced labor facility in the Soviet Gulag system. OKB scientists and engineers who'd been convicted of crimes were sent to a Sharashka for forced R&D. The Sharashkas were supervised by Lavrenti Beria of the NKVD, the secret police, under the official name 4th Special Department.
Forced research? That's not very different from what we do here.
Diamond Dogs is different. Everyone here believes in you. Regardless of where they came from or why they're here, they revere you. And they're fighting because it was their choice.
And if it wasn't, they'd leave?
Who knows? That's our reality here, whether it's real or not. If there's another truth, I don't want to know it. All that matters is that's the concept that's taken shape in their heads. The traces of a group ideology, our superstructure, to put it in Marxist terms.
All right. Go on.
Right. So anyway, At some point, the enemy started calling me Sharashka. This was after the war in Afghanistan broke out. While I was keeping an eye on you in that hospital, I was also heading up interrogations here. The men I broke gave up their comrades and families, everything they wanted to protect them most. No real cause for it. I just let myself get caught up in the old Russian pride. And suddenly I received the honor of becoming Special Interrogation Advisor to the forced labor camps. But the more men I interrogated, the more people saw me as just that, the interrogator. It helped cover my real objective of keeping you safe.
You went that far for me?
Far enough to keep you alive. I ended up being pretty well known among the Afghan guerrillas. Some of them would have seen me on the battlefield, and that's how I got the second half of the name. Shashka. It's a sword, a type of saber from the Caucasus. Russian dragoons and Cossacks carried them into battle. Now, the Russian Empire had a general by the name of Fyodor Arturovich Keller. His bravery earned him the nickname Russia's Greatest Shashka. Someone must have known about that, because somewhere along the line, Shashka got stuck on the end of Sharashka. The guerrillas were using the name amongst themselves, and by the time I got to hearing about it, pronunciation had wound up as Shalashashka.
So, half Gulag, half Hero Sword. Is a perfect fit.
But you see how rumors and ideas about people can get out of hand fast. Once you create a character and put it out there in public mind, it warps and twists with every baseless rumor. And before you know it, all people see are phantoms. In my case, it works out just fine. I'm plenty used to working under aliases.
So SALT II still hasn't gone into effect.
That treaty was drawn up to limit not just the size of the U.S. and Soviet Union's nuclear arsenals, but also their delivery systems. The whole deal. Just when we thought all those years of negotiations had paid off, somebody decides to invade Afghanistan. The timing couldn't have been worse.
The president was in the middle of the SALT II talks back then.
You mean while you were busy trying to stop Peace Walker? I heard. President Ford was meeting with the General Secretary in Vladivostok. In his absence, the political brass in America detected what they didn't realize was false nuclear launch data from Peace Walker. They were on the verge of ordering a retaliatory nuclear strike.
Coleman's big idea? Humans are incapable of destroying themselves. Turns out he never knew what humans are capable of.
If that AI, the boss, hadn't found a way to stop the fake data transmission, they probably would have gone ahead with the launch.
Deterrence was revealed as the pipe dream it was.
All thanks to you. And her. The U.S.-Soviet talks looked set to fall through. What happened in Nicaragua no doubt helped trigger a change of heart. But in the end...
The time's to find the politics. When you've grabbed their tail, they turn and bite your hand.
I first met you 20 years ago now. The place was Selenouyarsk in the Soviet Union. We were enemies. I was with the GRU. You were still fighting for America. 1964. Operation Snake Eater. Its objective? The assassination of the legendary soldier known as the Boss. When you returned home successful, they awarded you the title Big Boss. Your CO, Zero, sought to carry on the boss's will by covertly establishing his own organization. You knew the original members from Operation Snake Eater. From America, there was David O, or as he was to you, Major Zero. Donald Anderson, aka Sigint. Dr. Clark, who went by paramedic during the operation. And the fourth, you. From China, there was Eva. And me, Ocelot, from the Soviet Union. 6 in total. To us, government notions of friend and foe were meaningless. As were East and West, we joined forces by our will alone. Our objective was to fulfill the boss's dying wish, to make the world one. And to do it, Zero used the Philosopher's Legacy, the secret war fund you obtained during Operation Snake Eater. This organization would go on to become Cypher. I, on the other hand, was left with the problem. You only recovered half of the legacy. I had to locate the other half myself. When I found the funds, I passed them on to Zero, just as you wanted.
I still trusted him in those days.
We thought what he was doing was the boss's will, until he started that one project.
Les enfants terribles, Zero called it.
You parted ways, as did Eva, leaving only Anderson and Clark still with him. I maintained limited contact, although truth be told, we were just keeping tabs on one another. The reason was always you. After you returned to the Army and created Foxhound, you left America. For a time, even I'd lost track of you. I'd imagine Zero did too. You always were the best when it came to hide and seek. Zero created Cypher, an information network to tap into every corner of the globe. Woven together, Cypher's arteries make the world just one big organism. And that's not all. It also monitors the thorn in Zero's side. That's you, tracking your coordinates wherever you might go. The further you strayed from your roots, the larger Zero became. It's as if he was trying to close the gap between you. But before long, he disappeared from public life. Only a few people had direct contact with him. For a time, I was one of them. Then a year after you fell into your coma, he slipped out of sight entirely. Since then, nothing. No photos, no recordings, not even a reliable rumor as to his whereabouts. I tried every method I could think of, but Zero was gone. Freed of his control, his creation, his power continued to grow. Cypher is a great beast, and Zero was its spine. But even without him, it's endured, evolved. But now its body is rotting, riddled with parasites. Parasites like the ones who attacked you 9 years ago in the Caribbean, and then at the hospital. Cypher's Black Ops Unit, XOF. They learned where you were, and came to wipe the slate clean. Christmas Eve, 1979, the Soviet Union rolled into Afghanistan. Muslims had revolted against the Soviet-friendly regime established the year before. The DRA forces could no longer contain it themselves, so the Soviets went in to intervene. The Afghan government was powerless and fraught with infighting. They lost the hearts and minds of the people, and that alarmed the Soviet leadership. With the Islamic Revolution happening in Iran, the Soviets felt they had to act fast or risk the spread of Islamic revivalism. A superpower, sending a motorized rifle division against men on horseback with antique rifles. Everyone thought it'd be over in an instant, only it wasn't. Some Muslims made their fight a jihad, a holy war, and began a guerrilla campaign on all fronts. A war of attrition. These fighters call themselves Mujahideen. They're being supported by the West through Pakistan. That's why Miller was involved. He was training them near the Zero Line, sponsored by the CIA. The war has become a nightmare for the Soviet troops stationed here. They thought they'd be headed home in 6 months at the most. Then a year passed. 2 years. Now here we are 4 years on with no exit in sight. Afghanistan has become the Soviet Union's Vietnam. The Soviet troops on the ground want to go home, but at least they have homes to go back to. The Afghans have lost theirs. The Soviets destroy the kishlaks, villages, wherever they can. They burn down homes and fields, fill in wells, turn pastures into minefields. It's created a mass of refugees who fled to Pakistan. If the Mujahideen are fish swimming around the villages, the Soviets will go so far as to dry out their ocean. But this has had a big price. There's bitter resentment among the Afghans, and they're taking out their anger on the soldiers on the front lines. Among the Mujahideen are the Pashtun people. They're fiercely devoted to their code of Badal, or revenge. Soviets they've captured have had their hands, feet, and noses cut off before being left to die at the side of the road, just to show their comrades what they're capable of. Friendlies who come across them can do nothing but put them out of their misery. Then they burn down another village in retaliation. And the cycle of vengeance goes on. This war, the Kremlin never expected to have this much trouble against the Mujahideen. Afghanistan is a tribal society. Tradition demands that its people stand up to any outsiders who set foot on their land. With the honor of their people at stake, they have everything to fight for. No matter how hard the Soviets hit them, they continue to appear out of nowhere, striking back, then vanishing again. But there's one thing even the Mujahideen fear. Every last one of them. The Soviet gunships. They're highly maneuverable and equipped with massive firepower. Plus, the underside of the fuselage is heavily armored. The Mujahideen can barely scratch them with their small arms. Anyone who hangs around gets mowed down by the gunship's heavy machine guns. This new honeybee weapon that was given to the Hamid fighters, it's no doubt something to help them strike back against the gunships. Which makes it a weapon that could change the course of the war. Those guerrilla fighters known as Mujahideen don't actually belong to a single organization. Afghanistan is a multi-ethnic country. You've got the Pashtuns, the Tajiks, Uzbeks, Hazaras, and each of them is split into their own tribes, large and small. Each ethnicity has several rebel organizations that their various tribes gather under. They're united under the banner of jihad, but that doesn't mean they work like a single standing army. Just look at the area around Smasy Fort. A lot of Tajiks used to live there, but they fled after the Soviets started their Scorched Earth campaign. With the area uninhabited, the Hamid fighters, who are Pashtun, decided to move in. The Hamids are based out of the city of Peshawar. We passed through it on the western edge of Pakistan. The Pashtun people have long lived in Afghanistan and western Pakistan. They used to travel back and forth frequently. Then Britain went and established the border that still stands today. The Hamid fighters get generous support from the Pakistani government. The government wants to use them to secure influence over Afghanistan. Their liaison with the Hamids is Inter-Services Intelligence, and behind the ISI, you have the CIA. That's probably how the honeybee ended up in the hands of the Hamid men.
the R&D team analyze the honeybee.
How? The CIA wanted it with everything intact.
They took it apart to look at it. Then they put it back together. Everything intact.
That's the R&D boys, all right.
Turns out the honeybee's homing capabilities are a cut above previous manpads. It can detect a broad range of infrared wavelengths, and even ultraviolet for supplementary guidance.
Hence the name, huh?
Right. Honeybees rely on UV light to fly. With this device, flares don't do the target any good.
That's why the Soviets are losing so many gunships.
And why the CIA was so desperate to get it back. It wasn't just about preventing the Soviets from devising countermeasures. What if the likes of Iran got their hands on it?
American aircraft would be put at risk too.
We can use this tech to develop our own portable missile. That'll give us a huge advantage. It'll take a little time before the analysis results can be applied to actual implementation. But we'll keep moving with the research.